Thank you very much. Thanks for having me this morning, and I appreciate your time. Again, my name is Apurva Naik, and how many of you have heard of the College Credit for Heroes project or familiar? Okay, great. Well, that's good. One of the big issues that we have is trying to outreach and spread the word. Since we don't get advertising or marketing dollars, a lot of it is just myself trying to spread the word through word of mouth. To give you a little bit of background, well, first on myself, I'm a Navy veteran. I was in the Navy for 7 years, and I was an air intercept controller, which is similar to air traffic control, but we do the tactical side also. I bring this up because I think it's a real good example. So we not only learn air traffic control, but air intercept control, a more advanced version. So when I got out of the military, I wanted to just see how much of that would transfer into the civilian sector. And I learned, I had to get humbled a little bit, 4 credit hours out of 150 credit hour certification, civilian certification. So it was kind of really eye-opening for me that, the training that we get is top notch. It's far advanced in terms of air traffic control. We also have to get a secret clearance to learn weapons capabilities for foreign platforms and everything else. It's a much higher advanced level of air traffic control, but that it wouldn't translate, and it's simply because there's not a translation available to the civilian side. So it really opened my eyes at the time that there is this huge disparity that exists, and I wanted to look into further, well, if it's that way for my job, it's probably that way for lots and lots of jobs in the military through all the branches of the service. And so it just happened to be at the same time in 2011, the Texas legislature passed some legislation that tasked the state of Texas with looking at military experience and training and translating that into the higher education. And that's a lot of what I do with strategic initiatives is work on those sorts of legislative projects. And so I jumped on the chance at this one. And since that time, this has sort of been, I had my first child around this time, so I joke a lot that this is sort of my second child. But it's been fantastic, and I'm so excited to tell you more about it today. So that's sort of how we started in 2011, and we started doing research on throughout the state and how colleges and universities throughout the state award credit for military experience. And what we found was huge disparities from school to school, from whether it be a college to a university, whether it be a college to college. I mean, in some cases we would see a college maybe located in close to a base, Fort Hood or Fort Sam or Fort Bliss, and maybe have a very good relationship working with the bases or working with veterans. We'd see them award very high numbers of credits, and then you could literally go down the road a few miles in some cases to the next college, and they would award nothing. And so, where's the gap? Where are these gaps existing? That's sort of what we wanted to take a look at, and how do we eliminate those, and how can we extend the award of credit for military experience by looking deeper into the training that they get. So the way we went about it was focusing on 3 specific areas. One, we created an online web portal, which is www.collegecreditforheroes.org. And I'll go into more detail on this, but essentially what it is a veteran can go on, log on, enter in rank, rate, time and service, occupation code. It's essentially the same. We use the exact same recommendations. It's from the American Council on Education. The recommendations that you're going to find in a joint service transcript or probably any transcript that you get. And I'll go into, there's a few things that the College Credit for Heroes evaluation does, though, that the joint service transcript doesn't do, specifically for schools in Texas, and I'll go into more detail in a second on that. The second thing we did was we created a network of partner schools. This is important because, as you know, it's not just what's on a transcript or an evaluation like the JST that a veteran can take to a university or school. It's still up to the receiving institution to award any of that credit, some of that credit, none of that credit. So really the thought behind this network of partner schools is to explain the recommendations, to look deeper into it. What does the American Council on Education recommend, and why do they recommend it? What have our schools that have created a curricula done and recommended? So to really have these conversations, what we found is a lot of times some schools, some administrators, some faculty chairs, they could be very reluctant in the beginning to award credit for military experience simply because they don't know what goes into some of that training. So what we found is a lot of this is hosting meetings at the campus and explaining some of the training that goes into specific occupations to just raise awareness about that. These are not just award, these credits are not being given, these are credits that are earned by these service members. And then the third way is we've created acceleration curricula. We have a grant funding that can help schools with the cost of developing new acceleration curricula, taking a look at specific occupations and translating those and awarding credit for specific courses that the military is already training in, and where the school feels like they could award the credit for training that's already been given in the military, they can develop these. And so the money can pay for either developing a new curricula or replicating one of our existing 80 curricula that's already been developed. And I'll go into more detail on all of that. So the first thing I'd like to tell you about is our website, the www.collegecreditforheroes.org. As I mentioned, a veteran can log on, create an account, enter in all of their information, including specialty schools and that sort. It's going to give them, first, an unofficial evaluation based on what they have told us, what they can receive, and that's based, again, on the American Council on Education recommendations. Then, depending on whether they want to make that an official evaluation, they can submit any documentation, such as DD 214, joint service transcript, whatever our evaluators ask for, in order to verify that they should receive those credits. Then they can take that to a college or university to receive the credit award. Now, since the beginning of this, we've had over 70,000 users, about 18,000 evaluations have been issued. On average, it's about 25 credit hours per evaluation, and again, that is consistent with the ACE recommendations as well. A lot of those are going to be, in some cases, what's the word I'm looking for here? Electives, I'm sorry. A lot of those are going to be electives. Some of them are going to be, most of them are lower level credits. But again, on average, about 25 credit hours. Now, the difference in what the College Credit for Heroes evaluation offers from what you can get on your joint service transcript is it's specifically for Texas colleges and universities. We worked with Central Texas College, who's located pretty much on Fort Hood, and have for decades, relationship working with service members. And Dr. Janelle Welsh at CTC, for 50 years now, she's developed what's called an ISEP manual, or a career evaluation process specifically for the military. And what it does is translate the ACE recommendations into the Texas Common Course Numbering System and the WECM, which is the workforce equivalent. And so it actually takes that guesswork out. So a lot of times what happens on a college campus, especially on campuses that might not have, say, a Veterans Affairs office, maybe it's just the registrar's office, and sometimes the staff might have a limited experience with translating military experience. They'll get that joint service transcript, and it might say like advanced mathematics, and then they have to figure out, okay, well, how does that relate to the course at our school? And then if it is 2301 algebra, well, then they're kind of putting their accreditation on the line by saying, well, yeah, advanced mathematics does mean, well, what if it doesn't? Then you're kind of putting your accreditation on the line. So what this does is takes that away, this does that work for you, sort of. They're taking that guesswork out, doing that evaluation work for you. Central Texas College and their ISEP manual, that would be the source that you would be able to give to say, okay, yes, it translates to this course number in the Texas course numbering system, and they're the institution that have established as that. The other thing that it does that the joint service transcript doesn't do is we have a full staff of evaluators at Central Texas College that are there full-time to answer questions not only from veterans who we've received feedback that it's a fantastic, sometimes when you're 21 years old and you just got out of the military and you're used to having everything sort of taken care of for you, now all of a sudden you're just kind of out, you've got everything to figure out on your own, and it can be kind of a process to get your JST, to get your documentation, and this is a way these evaluators are there to answer all the questions. Well, yeah, you have this A school back in 2000 whatever, and that translates into this, and yeah, we might be able to give you credit for this if you can send us documentation showing that you took that school, and that sort of thing. So that's been great, but then also the evaluation staff has been great for college and university staff that have questions about, well, how does this specific course translate? And so the feedback we've gotten is also, sometimes they say it's taking away hours and hours of work that we used to spend scratching our heads and trying to figure out, how a specific military occupation translates into our colleges, or credits at our college. So that's sort of our website. Do we have any questions yet up to this point? Okay, good. Okay, and again, this is taking a look specifically at the joint service transcript. So this is, issued by the Department of Defense. I'm sure a lot of you probably seen this, and you'll see typically, and this is a real service member. I've just taken away his name and information, but you'll see the specific course that, this is the same. The joint service transcript, and then I'll show you the College Credit for Heroes, but you'll see some of the courses here. It's kind of hard to see, but server administration. This is an information technology occupation, security, PC troubleshooting and repair. And so, sometimes, as you can imagine, put yourself in the shoes of a registrar's office who might have limited experience with it, and you're going, okay, well, how does that translate into the course at our school? And so what the Central Texas College does in the ISEP manual is it puts it into the Texas Common Course numbering system, which is right here. So it has a sort of a frame of reference that you can relate to. And sometimes these courses are called different things. One problem that it's the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board that makes the Texas Common Course numbering system. One problem that they have is sometimes all different schools will call the same course different names, but it kind of puts you in that ballpark into a little bit closer to where you go to relate to that. And so the second thing that I mentioned is this network of colleges and universities that that have sort of joined on through this partnership. And the Dallas Community College District is one of our partners in this. It started in 2011 with 7 colleges, and now we have 44, including some of the large state institutions, state systems like the A&M, UT, Tech systems, and on down to all. I think the large majority are colleges in Texas, because the large majority of our credits that we award are lower division credits, so it makes the most sense. And a lot of them we're talking about workforce certifications, continuing education certifications. So probably the bread and butter of how this relates the most is to our community colleges throughout the state. But as I mentioned again, this is really sort of a way to raise the awareness into the understanding on college campuses for the recommendations that are made for military experience. And the process that we do through this is we'll have some meetings with the staff that needs to be present, the staff that's actually going to be. A lot of times what we want to have meetings directly with department chairs who have to award the credit for, and a lot of times, for good reason, they can be very skeptical about awarding credits to some student who has never set foot in a classroom for this particular course. So a lot of this is explaining that we're not asking to diminish the integrity of your occupation or of the courses that you're doing. We're asking you to just recognize the credit that's been earned by these veterans. And in some cases, it's not always the case where sometimes we do have veterans who have maybe taken some courses or taken a specific occupation, but then maybe they went into a different occupation. Maybe they're a corpsman in the Navy, and then but when they actually got to the fleet, they became a military policeman. So they didn't actually practice that. So what we've developed, and I'll go into more detail on this, is a lot of everything from competency exams to prior learning assessments to actually in some of our cases like more technical fields, they actually have to go to the department chair and show that they can take apart an engine and put it back together. And so different campuses have different ways of verifying that these veterans have the training that they say that they have. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that. But that's kind of the thought process behind our partnership, and basically what it takes is signing a memorandum of understanding, and we've purposely tried to make this as easy as possible to sign. We've tried to make it it's 1 page long. It doesn't obligate the school. The school doesn't say we will award credit. It says we'll evaluate these evaluations from veterans individually, and to the extent possible, we'll award as much credit as we see. So the receiving institution still has the ultimate final say in how much credit that they award. All this is saying is that we understand the recommendations that are made, and to the extent possible, we'll award credit where credit is due. And so through that, we've been able to establish this partnership, and has been able to get our foot in the door and to explain some of the recommendations and so forth, so on and so forth. And it's also, I think, a good opportunity for schools to show that they support awarding credit to veterans for their experience. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question about your partner institutions.
Mm-hmm.
Does the student go through the College Credit for Heroes themselves and they bring those recommendations to the institution, or does the institution refer a veteran student to the College Credit for Heroes
Mm-hmm.
to have their experiences evaluated?
Both. In some cases, the veteran just goes on, hears about it. Hopefully we've been able to spread the word enough to reach out to them, and they go on and they create their own account and bring that to the campus. In some cases, our partners, through joining this partnership, they institute it as sort of their new practice at their Veterans Affairs office or at their school, and they use this as a resource. And then when a veteran walks into their office to get their evaluation, they'll access it with the veteran and utilize our evaluation staff. And also so the official evaluation, whether a veteran gets the evaluation, requests the evaluation, or a school does, that it can be sent either directly to the veteran or directly to the school, to the registrar's office. Mm-hmm.
How long does it take that process to happen?
It depends on how long it takes the veteran to get the verifying documentation in. If they get it in fast, it can take as little as a week. Sometimes, depending on how long it takes to get the verifying documents, it could take longer. But yeah, it could take, but usually, I did my own and it took about a week. Mm-hmm.
Is there a crossover, like when they apply to apply their benefits, that it would feed back in the loop back to someone else so that they do get this assessment? Kind of much, just catch can, either he catches it or the school catches it, but there's no real loop that says, here's a person that we could maybe reduce their time here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one advantage of that, and I hope I'm answering your question. If I'm not, let me know. Yeah. One advantage of that is sometimes credits get lost in the translation, right. On a joint service transcript. Sometimes a specialty school or other things don't get identified on there. So one advantage that we have is with this evaluation staff who have a lot of experience, they can identify some of those, and then include that into just by getting a showing the documentation that they went to that school, they can get that awarded. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure if that does.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I'm just wondering more so about sometimes students don't have the wherewithal as to what options are out there for them. But once they apply for benefits, then does that get fed back into someone, this is a veteran,
Yeah.
and they have the ability to maybe have their history looked at to see what we can all reduce for them. So they
Sure.
can spend an extra semester or half a semester.
And
For example, do y'all have any official tie-in with VA education folks?
Right.
Where they would say, hey, you should do this. You should, as part of getting you started in school, and is there any formal connection with the VA folks?
not other than just, we've worked with them in that they acknowledge our project and that it's part of something that they also refer student veterans to. But what I would say is that we're constantly looking for, and I think a great resource is a lot of student veterans have a lot of frustration in that they're saying, well, yeah, it's, this is what it shows, but there's also other additional credits that I feel like I should be able to get credit for. But unfortunately, there's no one to talk to, no one to explain that, to say, hey, I went to this school in Pensacola in 2002, and why is that? That should be something that I should get credit for. So this does give an outlet for a very seasoned, experienced evaluators who are at Central Texas College to look into that for them, sort of have a voice for them to say, okay, let me look into that, and if you can send me the documentation that shows you went to that, we can, maybe there is an award of credit that we can get you, or maybe there's not. In some cases, like I was an air intercept controller, so if I wanted to go into an aviation field, there's probably going to be a credit that I could look into and get awarded. But if I'm going into an accounting, there's probably not. So a lot of times, that's the unfortunate answer for a lot of veterans. But just having, I think, an advocate there on the phone to talk to and to get an answer from, I think goes a long way in just in easing some of that frustration that you can get. Okay, and that takes us to the third area of focus that we focused on is creating acceleration curricula. Well, essentially the idea here is we wanted schools to take a look closer at military training and how it relates to their coursework at their college campuses, and say, well, for every diesel mechanic has to, not only learns, say, all of the details and the technical information of how to do a diesel engine, but they also get first degree training in first degree medical attention. They get firefighting training. They get all of these other things. And how can we award credit for that in certain areas? And so we offer, since 2011, we've offered grant funding. We have about $1.6 million a year in grant funding available for schools to do exactly that, for them to take a look in specific areas and take a look at the military training and develop an acceleration curricula that can then be used not only at their school, but then can be replicated at any other school in Texas that wishes to adopt that as well. And we can fund also any related costs that it takes to replicate any of our curricula that have already been developed. Since 2011, we've created about 80 curricula, and everything from nursing and allied health, information technology. I'm going to go over some of these, but 80 curricula in a lot of different areas. It started out, we started out focusing on allied health and healthcare jobs just because they're very in demand, they're good paying jobs, they're very easily translatable. But then so one of the ones we did, well, first Alamo College in Alamo College developed an acceleration towards an associate's in nursing, and then through that, this is another one of the ones we created just this last year at Texas Tech Health Science Center towards a bachelor's in nursing. And one of the really exciting things about it is that a well-qualified corpsman and medic, and we're talking about service personnel who were working in ER tents in Iraq and Afghanistan, who were called nicknamed Doc because they're a lot of cases they're performing the services of a doctor out in the field, and then they're coming back and having to take like things like basic phlebotomy courses and things, very, very basic courses. So one of the exciting things about this is that if a well-qualified veteran comes in, they've already got their all of their core curricula taken care of. They can get their bachelor's in science and nursing in less than a year, which is very, very impressive. And another cool thing about it is they don't have to go all the way out to Lubbock at Texas Tech. They actually have articulation agreements throughout the state with hospitals that they can do their clinical work in Houston or in San Antonio or here in Dallas, and do the actual coursework online and do the clinical work throughout the state. So it's a pretty exciting curricula that's been developed. And now, that Alamo College curricula that I mentioned towards the Associates in Nursing, or this one towards the Bachelor's in Nursing, can be replicated at any school in Texas. Currently, Austin Community College, for example, is replicating the Alamo College curricula that was developed. So now, one of the challenges that we had is that, for instance, these curricula are so great, but they're only available to students who are in those geographic locations. So San Antonio veterans were only able to access that Associates in Nursing, but now with the grant funding, Austin Community College is going to do it. So now veterans in the Austin area and the San Antonio area, and really our ultimate goal is to get these replicated at other schools throughout the state as well. I mentioned Austin Community College replicating the nursing curriculum, but even before that, they developed an acceleration curricula for IT occupations. And this is a very, very transferable field to military occupations, to the civilian equivalency. In some cases, they can receive an entire associate's degree, up to 64 credit hours, because of the training that they got in the military. In some areas, they're not as translatable as that, but in information technology is an area where, like for instance, some certain certifications, Microsoft certifications, things like that, they can walk out of the military and walk right into a workforce certification. And in a few occupations, they can get an associate's degree, a full associate's degree. It's pretty amazing. This program at ACC, as you know, in Austin right now, we have tons of technology companies coming and based there. Samsung, Facebook, Google. What we're finding is our students in a lot of these courses are getting pulled straight from the classroom, and so it's creating another problem for us that they're not finishing their degrees. It's kind of a good problem to have because they're getting employed into not very good paying and jobs, but we're encouraging them to come back and finish your degree when you have the chance as well. But it's been a successful project. A few years ago, one of the things that we ran into was we were hearing from a lot of veterans is, it's fantastic what you're doing for corpsmen and medics and allied health careers, but what about me? What about the grunt, the guy who carries the weapons and is out in the infantry? And so we started talking to industry, and one of the things we heard from a lot of industry in Texas was that, well, we need guys who are physically fit, who can be out in the sun and carry heavy equipment, and it just made total sense that we take a look at, especially a few years ago, as more than it is probably now, was the oil and gas industry, and we were able to take a look at some of the areas like first aid and firefighting, OSHA training, that translates very well into that, and streamline the amount of time that it takes to get to oil field technician certification. Now, since this industry has sort of gone into a pretty bad recession, we've not had as many people interested in getting into this as before. But when we first started, this was almost there was a waiting list to get into this program. But that's the nature of that industry. It's very cyclic. It's been that way for years and decades. Another area that we developed in terms of technical certification was wind engineering, out in West Texas and down in the Valley especially. These are very in-demand jobs, good paying jobs. Texas State Technical College in Harlingen developed this one for an advanced certification program. I believe the certification program is an 8-week program. They were able to streamline to a 4-week program for well-qualified veterans. And they're, able to transition almost seamlessly into a pretty good high-paying job. They took me up to the top of one of these, and it's terrifying. Not for me, but so that kind of takes us to where we are today. And there's tons and tons of more. You can find a list of all the other acceleration projects, and if your school is interested in developing one or replicating one, right now, actually the grant is open right now, but it's about it's about to finish, I believe. July 23rd is the closing period, but this is an annual grant opportunity that sometimes we do open it twice a year. Actually, this year we've opened it twice this year, but that funding is now going to be available annually. So phase 4 just began, and we have some new projects from Texas A&M San Antonio, another one from Texas State Technical College. We have a number of different ones now. Like I said, the RFP is open right now for new projects, and so we'll receive those and evaluate those. Expanding to new colleges, and really the universities have just started getting in the last 2 years. It had pretty much only been colleges up to that point, so now we're sort of going into uncharted territory with what universities are developing right now too. As I mentioned before, the grant funding is available for any acceleration programs or replicating existing programs. In the last legislative session, a bill was passed to change this from a pilot project to now a permanent project. So now this is a permanent project moving forward. Every year we report to the legislature and the governor on best practices, and this we take directly from our college partners and what they're telling us about what the problems that they're facing out there in terms of awarding credit to military veterans, and so basically what's broken and how do we fix it. So it's a pretty unique opportunity to get, and back in Austin, that goes directly into our military and defense affairs committees at the House and the Senate, and that goes into exactly what they develop. So it's a pretty good opportunity to have a voice in talking to the legislature about what we need to do in order to fix the problems that exist in terms of awarding credit for military experience. And so, I literally take the comments from faculty and administrators at colleges and schools throughout the state and put it directly into that report. So, I always tell our faculty and administration that this is pretty much your microphone into the legislature, and so to take advantage of it, and they do. They're not. There's not. We don't have a problem with filling up the pages of that report with comments from faculty. So that kind of brings us to, that's kind of a summary of where we are with this project, and it's pretty exciting and moving forward. There's my contact information. We're always looking for new ideas. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, you may have mentioned this, but where can we get a copy of the RFP? I'm on your website, I don't see it here.
Okay, I'll tell you what, if you send me an email, I'll email you that link, because it would be too, it's like it's on the state comptroller's, it's actually on the comptroller's website, but I can forward you a direct link to that, and that, yeah, if anyone's interested in that, let me know. Sir.
A couple quick questions. One, the ICEP, what's the acronym?
Yeah.
It's ICEP, and it's Individualized Career Evaluation Program. And that's the Central Texas College's translation process that they've developed over.
Is it proprietary?
It is proprietary. It is, but they share it with anyone. I mean, they'll give you a copy. I can get you sent a copy of it. Yeah.
Come on, August 3rd, we'll be there. It's all about, okay.
Yeah. That's yep.
We'll be at Central Texas College for
Or just
a
that.
day specifically about this.
And I'll be there too. I'll be there too. Yeah.
And does it include all the services as far as or is it more?
They've done the Army and the Navy right now. The Air Force has, the community college of the Air Force, so that's really, translation is not really an issue for the Marine Corps. A lot of the same, the Marine Corps and the Navy occupations align pretty well, but they are working on a Marine Corps specific ISEP manual.
As far as the College Credit for Heroes transcript or that evaluation, like, do you have a feel for how far back the links are to the military training?
That's a good question. It really depends on the occupation. For like some of your more technical trainings, like mechanics and things like that, it's a longer period of time. For some of your allied health, it's less. It's like a 5-year window from the time that you had your training to the time that it relates to a college, or I'm sorry, not from the time of the training, but from the time of your separation from the military. So from the time, if it's been 15 years since you were practicing as a Army medic, then you probably need to remediate some of that. And it doesn't, yeah. And it also it depends on the occupation for like nurses, surgical technologists, things like that. It's like a 5-year window, but for some of the other ones, it could be longer. So it just depends, really. Okay, sir.
Is there a federal initiative? I mean, this is like, I don't know, brain surgery. I was in back in the 70s, and I think I used some of this when I went back to school. And it was a fight. I couldn't get almost anything, but I remember arguing with faculty in my discipline. But
Yeah.
this should have been done 50 years ago. It should be transferable without anybody arguing it. Is there anything?
It's amazing, that if anyone who takes a logical look at this is like, we spend billions of dollars training the most advanced military in the world, but we don't translate it to the civilian side. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But so there are other projects at other states. This is a humble brag, but yeah, in Texas we do things bigger and better. And so what we found is that this is the most advanced. Like for instance, in Minnesota, they have a similar web portal that translates and creates evaluations. Now, after this project has started, we're working with Virginia, with Indiana, Michigan, a 13 state consortium in the Midwest. Amy Sherman, who's here from Cale today, she's been instrumental with the Council of American Experiential Learning with connecting us with other states, and now we're using a lot of our best practices and discussing how to get started on this. But yeah, it's just kind of a head scratcher that why this hasn't been more of an initiative taking place in more places or at a federal level in terms of taking advantage of some of the.
Just as an anecdote to tag on to him, in 1975, Johnson State College in Johnson, Vermont, took a bunch of my community college or the Air Force credits as electives in my bachelor's program. That was 1975.
Wow.
So
Well, there's so many other
all
federal
over the
schools
place.
with nuclear, certifications, and transportation, and all we get is a lot of talk about how we want to make things more affordable, and there's no real footprint. And I would thought that was with the whole foundation, No Child Left Behind, when we started that. I was a high school educator, and to have something that goes from place to place to place. We all learn the same thing.
yeah, the skills are the same.
Yeah. But the positive thing is we are starting to see, especially I think with the GI Bill and the downturn, and a lot of veterans returning to the workforce and to higher education. We are seeing a lot of schools. I mean, not just in Texas, but I think across the country, they're starting to realize that, hey, this is a fully funded student, almost like a scholarship student. And, whereas what we saw 4 years ago, we saw a lot of faculty administration kind of going, if we award 12 credit hours, that's 12 credit hours of tuition. And we still get some of that even now. But what they're starting to realize is, that on the front end, you might award them 12 credit hours, but what we're getting is a fully funded student for 2 to 4 years, that this is an investment, and that the success rates for a lot of these students are much higher than I think what a lot of faculty expect from them, and that they end up finishing and completing and then getting multiple degrees. If they're awarded credit on the front end, they still have GI Bill left, they're going to go back and get additional degrees, and so.
Word of mouth marketing, because this college worked with me.
Yeah, I
Plus
think that's it.
Our funding model is changing to completers,
Yeah.
so there should be less emphasis on, we're going to lose that
Right.
tuition to this is a person closer to completion,
Exactly.
already, so it seemed like maybe there'd be more incentive for these Texas colleges to.
And it just makes sense, if you're an electrician or you're a medic or, it makes sense. And schools are required by law to evaluate and award credit for prior learning. So it just makes sense to if you're going to do its due diligence. And so a lot of what this project is really, what we really want to do is do that work for the schools, or just at the very least, take the expertise from other colleges in a minute, just almost a way to get schools communicating with each other about, like I mentioned at the beginning, that huge disparity from school to school, that shouldn't exist. It should be more of an even award of credit, and it's still, schools have different evaluation processes, and that's fine, but it shouldn't be a case where one school awards 12 credit hours and the very next school awards 0. There should be a little bit more of an even playing field.
So in your work with the partner institutions, have you developed some standard wording or recommended wording that an institution that wants to increase its use of acceptance of this credit could use? Because with Kevin's presentation earlier, and that need to be sure that there's a policy in place and that you have documentation, I think that could be beneficial.
Yeah, we've tried that in the first phase of College Credit for Heroes. Our original 7 institutions, we met monthly and tried to get them to agree on standards, and it was difficult, to say the least. It was almost like a soap opera sometimes. We had actual tears and shouting at each other. These are faculty members who, they're very protective of their coursework and their, as they should be. But it was tough. Even just to get them to agree on, we just wanted to use an average state tuition so that we could use it as a multiplier for estimating the amount of cost that we could save for this. Just getting them to agree on that was like pulling teeth. So it's tough. I think that's something that probably would be better for a legislative, I think that would need to be implemented as legislation, because it would just be too tough to get everyone to agree on something like that. And that might be something that we look in. It's been recommended on the legislative report, so we'll see. Sir?
Has there been any interaction between this program and programmatic accrediting bodies like nursing programs? My particular case, we have construction management programs. There's several other, IT programs. So you have these different accrediting bodies for those programmatic.
Right.
How much interactions, or has there been any about that? Because the push that we're seeing by CHIA back on those accrediting bodies has been that we're looking at our student learning outcomes either on a course basis or a programmatic basis. Seems like to me it'd be very easy to match that back with what's being done here. And how much that has been done.
Yeah, there's 2 major requirements on our grant for developing a new curricula. One of them is that any related accreditation body, you must you must seek and ultimately get the approval of the accreditation body. So for instance, like with both of our nursing programs, they had to get both national and state accreditation from the National Board of Nursing and the State Board of Nursing. Similarly, with any of our technical programs, they have to receive the approval. In some cases, it helps because, like for instance, with our nursing curricula, we thought that would take years to get national and state accreditation. Because Dr. Pelayo from Alamo College used to sit on both the National and State Board of Nursing, she was able to do it in like 8 months. So when we found that, in certain areas like that, creating a network and also having a large group of faculty that, can work together on this, it's worked to our benefit. Now, the other requirement that we require is that we can develop acceleration curricula in workforce fields, certification fields take for example a welder certificate. So if you want to accelerate and the coursework towards a welding certificate, that's fine, and it could be continuing education awards. The requirement that we have is that it also must be a stackable credit, be a dual credit that could be applied to an associate's in applied science or something equivalent, so that if a student does want to return and apply those towards an associate's or bachelor's degree, that they're able to do that. So yeah, they must receive approval from accreditation boards, and they must also apply towards an associate's.
Well, I worked with, on the trustees for the accrediting body there. And we worked with Southern Mississippi with the CBs, and we developed that program down there. And it is to the bachelor's, and it's worked out great. Is
it accelerated at all? It gives credit for CBs? That's very cool. I'm interested. Yeah. And we haven't had anything. We've had some interest in like some HVAC certifications and things like that, but construction's another area that high demand, especially in Texas. But we haven't had very many of those, so that we should talk about developing something about like that. That's exactly what the kind of thing we're looking for is taking a look at military-specific occupations like CBs and translating it into credits that can be awarded.
I've had 3 CPOs come through on the program. They take their stuff and put it back against that. But I had to do it myself because I was familiar with what they did, okay? And so it's been, but if they've done it and then tied it back to Wickham, it'd be pretty good for me. So
Yeah.
let's take a look at that.
Yeah, and not just in, obviously a CPO should walk in with a management, and it's amazing to me that they don't already have that. But then but not just that, but then technically specific credits, like for instance, if they're in a construction occupation in the military, that there's especially some of the basic things. Surely that we're able to, and it sounds like y'all are already sort of doing that with the CBs. And that's pretty much exactly what we're trying to do with this project. How are we on time?
You're great. You've got about 7 minutes.
Okay, awesome.
Any other burning questions?
Well, I have one that's kind of related but not quite on topic. I'm the dean of the STEM division, and so my issue is on the other end. So I have mathematics. And one of the things that we've found that the veterans are exempted from taking the TSI exam, and they get into the math classes and don't do very well. And then it's a really hard conversation to get them to back up and take the DMAT that they need because the Veterans Association won't pay for it. And so that's really something, as I walked in, I do apologize for being late, when I walked in, you said this is a direct line to to Washington, that's something that I think needs a further conversation, because while I want to accelerate them, and if they, I don't want to penalize them, but if they don't have the math skills and we put them in a class they're not ready for, we're penalizing them. And so that's a concern, and every semester I have at least one faculty member come to me with a concern about a student in this situation.
It's a very good point, and that's why, a lot of schools develop their own. So they might sign a memorandum of agreement with us, or they might replicate one of our acceleration programs, but they might do it slightly different depending on how they deem necessary. We have schools who might, for instance, take one of the curricula, replicate it, but they might not necessarily agree. Sometimes they go all the way down to they want to see not only the recommended courses that another school is awarding, but then they also want to see in those courses the syllabi and down to the course objectives for those syllabi to see how it aligns with their own. And then they might disagree on certain things and say, yeah, this works, but this doesn't. And we need to have our own policy for evaluating. In some cases, it's a one-on-one basis. So a veteran walks in and they have this recommendations. Well, that department chair for that specific department wants to meet with them and determine, well, does the student really have the abilities, the knowledge that this recommendation says they have. So it just really depends. And ultimately, that's also why we wanted to leave the final say to the individual institution. We're not demanding that these are the credits that you must apply. They're just recommendations, and that.
Well, but this is, they're exempted from taking the assessment exam.
Huh.
And so they're not even being assessed on their level of mathematics. So they're just being put straight into college level math classes.
Is that
Just here, or is that?
I understood that was a VA rule.
Shelley,
No, it's not
Yeah,
a
it's
VA
not.
law.
It's not?
So it's a state legislative action that all
Yes.
veterans are qualified to be exempt from the TSI based on their discharge date.
Okay.
But the advising policy in our department here at Eastfield is that is a standard, but we invite them to take the TSI once they look at the
okay.
curriculum and
Okay.
encourage them. And the VA will absolutely pay for
Okay.
any developmental course that is required based upon
Okay.
the test.
Okay, because that's the issue that we've had, is that these students have not tested and
Please
been
feel free
placed
to-
into, okay, so just contact you when I have that.
Absolutely.
Because I know we have moved a couple of students out of college algebra.
And as we have, new services
Okay.
developed within the new programming here at Eastfield, we'll better be
Okay.
able to advise and work with the
Okay.
students and
All right, thank you.
absolutely.
We worked around the exact same issue, and we developed our own leveling course internally within the program itself. And once we do that, then we can have no problems with the VA with that.
Okay.
It's worked out
We
really
did
good.
that.
So did you do that as an MCBA? Was that a math MCBA that you added in your course?
No,
You just integrated it and contextualized it in your
no, we
program?
put it under an engineering technology.
Okay.
So programs will stay there.
But that's
No, we
program.
worked with it.
So it's not
But it's
developmental,
not
but
an
it's.
MCBA.
No, it's
Well, it's
that's
program
exactly
specific,
right.
so.
That's exactly.
That's clever.
Yeah, that would be a good solution.
We've also taken in lieu of the standard where you have to have trig courses and elementary calculus course, we've taken that and changed that over into a global positioning systems and survey courses. It's the same stuff, it's just applied, it's the same stuff.
But this is
So
a
that-
technical.
Yeah, and technical programs have a whole lot more
Well, I think
leeway in doing
most of
it.
these
Yeah,
students were in traditional
absolutely.
programs, and so they were just they were in
Yeah.
college algebra and they weren't ready for it.
Not quite.
Yeah, some of our technical programs at colleges throughout the state, it's literally a veteran walking in and having to meet one-on-one with the department chair and saying, okay, take this engine apart and show me how to put it back together. And then if they get it, then they get the credit. If they don't, well, maybe you need to remediate in certain areas. And Okay, well, thanks very much for your time.